Okay, so the block that we dowelled and studded in the video is for this 3-rotor engine for Johnny in California that we're going to assemble now. Stock dowel pins and the two that have the, well, you guys won't see it on the camera. There's a little cutback on the top here on 2 of the dowel pins, okay? So 2 of those. And then these are the custom pins that we make with the cutback to match these ones. Those go in the front only. Keep the front section loose. These are the back dowels. Some factory tension bolts, and then some race studs. And again, these race studs go all the way through the block with a nut on either side. 3-rotor engines are assembled around the center housing, so you have some pulling that way and some pulling that way. The studs are a nice way to secure the whole block as a unit, and of course to act as extra dowel pins. So moving on, I guess we'll just talk a little bit about the specs of this engine. CNC intake ported. We did the exhaust porting as well. Lapped the side housings, did all the oil modifications to the block and matching gears and so on. High pressure race regulator. Brand new rotor parts. These are upgrade early Series 4 turbo rotors that we have lightened and clearanced and balanced on their own axis, and then balanced to a rotating assembly, which is using a custom 3-rotor shaft from New Zealand. We've shown this to you guys before, but we'll just talk about it real quick. We did the oil modifications in the block, enlarging the feed galleries to the gears themselves, porting out the oil pump area, and then that's our CNC porting on the intake, and very big runners to accompany the factory 3-rotor long runner intake manifold. And this back housing has the Mazda factory race regulator installed. And of course all the work for the studding and the doweling on the block has been finished. So it's going to be a real strong engine by the time we're done. We'll start getting the bearings lubed up and the O-rings put in the housings, and we'll be back with our camera facing the engine stand ready to assemble. Okay, so again, these are the dowels that we're focusing on throughout the rest of the video. And real important that, you know, when you do an engine with this much attention to detail on the dowels, that you know, you do a test dry fit, which we've done, and everything was proved to slide together the way that we knew it would. So we're just going to go through this quite quickly just to get the block done. We probably will not film setting end play and doing the front end of the engine. It'll more or less just be till torquing the bolts. We're going to put our last bit of assembly lube on the main bearings. We already have the rotor bearings lubricated, and same with the other gears on the rotors. This is the last bearing that needs any assembly lube. And then I guess we'll explain a little bit more about what else we're doing to this engine. I just noticed that these rotors also have the combustion chamber clearancing, which is something the customer felt he would need based on the horsepower levels he's trying to achieve. Whenever you're making sort of more than 250 horsepower per rotor, it becomes really important not just to have the strength of the studs and the rotors, but it's also it comes down to what the crankshaft can handle. Much like on a 13B, which doesn't have the same long span as a 20B, but the 13Bs, even at a certain level, can start to flex the crankshaft. And what happens when that occurs is you get contact from the area around the combustion chamber of the rotor and the chrome on the rotor housing. again, as I mentioned, this is a custom crankshaft. This is not factory. And we have deliberately chosen these very strong Series 4 rotors for the kind of boost this guy wants to make. And you probably can't see it in the camera, and it's not real important to zoom in, but there is extra clearancing around the combustion chambers on these rotors as well, because even though he's got the stronger upgraded crank, I mean, it's alleged to be stronger. It's still possible that you can get some crankshaft deflection, high RPM, high boost. So the customer wanted to go ahead and just clearance the around the chambers. And of course, as I said before, we have already lightened and side clearance and tip clearance these rotors. So about the only other mod, well, upgrade that maybe wasn't mentioned, which is the stage we're at now, is the fact that we're using the treated in-house rotaryengine.com Apex seals again. We would use nothing but, obviously, since we make them, and it's the seals we sell. I'm finding now that there's a lot of individuals who have come down to maybe their second build on their turbo engine in the last, maybe since either they bought the car or just in general, and they've now got to the point where they've assessed their engine from their first rebuild and looked at the Apex seals and expressed some serious dissatisfaction in rotor housing chrome wear and warpage, saying that the engine was gradually losing compression, and that's one of the reasons they took it apart in the first place, and they're convinced that the Apex seals and the wear that they made sucked and kind of killed everything. So it's good to see that we're getting really good feedback from people with our seals, not making those complaints and saying, man, ever since I did my build with your guys' seals, the engine has been running great, and this could be, you know, a month later, 6 months later, or even a year or two later, and starting to catch on. We're getting a lot of referrals. I want to thank all the people out there who have been referring people to us for parts and services, and our Apex seals. And I will also say this to all the Canadians out there watching. You guys are all missing out. I know we don't do a great job of you know, featuring promotions on Facebook, or, you know, doing a lot of advertising for kits and specials and so on, even though we do offer those once in a while. You mainly have to check the website, but we get a lot of traffic from the US to our website, and all those US customers, they're all saving money, you know. And we guarantee the lowest price on our rebuild kits and our engine parts. We have never seen anybody sell rotors or housings for less than us. And we feel the same way about the rebuild kits. People who are, we going down, Mike? People who are using our seals, some of the time they call and they say, well, I've already bought the rest of the rebuild kit, it's just the Apex seals I need. And then I will tell them, well, they will ask me, just out of curiosity, you know, how much would you have sold me the whole kit with the seals? And they're like, what? That's in Canadian dollars or US? And I'm like, Canadian dollars. And it's, wow, man, I wish I found you guys before. And I can't tell you guys how many times I've heard that. I have heard that for years. And maybe it's telling me something that we should be doing a little bit more with advertising and promotion and so on. But just to let you guys know, if you're a fellow Canadian and you need help with rebuild parts, rotors, housings, seals, O-ring kits, you name it, it's all in stock right here. And we guarantee the lowest price. And I promise you, we have it. We will price match or beat anything that our competitors are advertising. So again, and again, that comment doesn't just apply to Canadians. That applies to anybody who is watching this video and anybody who needs help with rebuild parts or engine parts. But I say the Canadians are the ones missing out because we feel that we can sell you almost the same price in Canadian dollars as the competitors are charging in US dollars. So you do the math these days and that's quite a bit of money. Email, please. Please don't ask questions on YouTube about pricing or about, you know, what does it cost for this part or that part. I don't usually use YouTube for conducting business, but just all you got to do is email. It takes 3 minutes to send us an email, and we will usually get back to you with a quote within just a few days. Anyway, let's get away from that. That's not what we're here to talk about. We are at the stage now where we are going to be able to show the dowels going in. And that's something that will likely demonstrate in the best way the whole purpose of properly studding or doweling an engine, which is one of the primary reasons for this video. And you know, it's frustrating for us because we see so many of these places out there selling these kits where, you know, they give somebody a drill bit with the kit. And, you know, I look at it like that's an insult. It's like, you want me to put your stud kit in with this drill bit, you know? It's not right. That's not how it's done. Again, these are the dowel pins going in. And again, if you look, they're going in just like the factory ones. Very little clearance. I mean, you can barely feel that wiggle, but just drops in right to the bottom. And that, you know, very, very important. And then, of course, there's going to be studs all the way around this as well. So this is going to be a very strong engine. So in closing, again, while we're on the topic, and, you know, some people are saying, well, I'm sick of hearing about studding and doweling. Well, you guys just don't understand the importance then. It's very, very important. But the fact that these dowels are interference slip fit, just like the factory alignment pins. This housing has no ability to go that way. It can't twist, it can't move, it can't do anything. It is stuck in this position. This span to this span, you've got very little support in here, and with high combustion pressures, you know, this section of the motor can move, and you can see scuff marks on the housings when you take them apart to show that, you know, this moves. And more importantly, you detonate, and the charge wants to knock the engine backwards. It will be an incredible amount of combustion in the wrong spot, and the load will actually transfer to this upper pin, and we'll try and crack the block at the back right here, or the front. So putting in these extra dowel pins, that's not going to happen. You're just simply not going to be able to crack the block, and you're going to have the most strength that you can get from anything. But these kits that are out there where they're giving you a drill bit, you know, I've said it before and I'll say it again, you guys are all wasting your money. You may think it looks cool to have some studs in your motor when it's all assembled, and there's no doubt about it, they do look kind of cool. But if you're not gaining on strength, and especially like the kit we showed you earlier that has no contact, no interference or slip fit, and no increase in thread size or stud size, all it is a larger bolt with extra clearance. It's the same thing as the stock 10 mil bolt, and there's no strength there at all. It's just, it doesn't do anything. Complete waste of money, complete waste of time. Those shops should be ashamed that they're selling that stuff. And I'll take a look, Mike. Just be very careful when you make those decisions. We sell all the stud kits for 13B, 12A, and 3 rotor engines, along with these dowel pin kits. Okay, now each location that we have dowelled, we have removed some of the threads in the factory thick iron. So what we had to do is bring those down deeper, and therefore remove the short 13B bolt, and we've decided to use a much longer RX8 long bolt, and we get a lot of thread adheration on that note too. But those are all going to go right where we have studs. So RX8, 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 and then we have one of our regular 13B bolts. So we're going to run those in, and then we'll flip the engine over. And we just need enough pressure on this to hold the back half together. And then once we get the front together, we'll have some through bolts that will go right through and clamp the engine together as an assembly. And then we can start adjusting the line bore. And same thing on the front bolts. Let's turn this over and then we'll show you from there what we mean. On the front bolts, it's the same idea. We have made custom bolts, so normally they're this long. We've added the thread length to compensate for this machine work where the dowel pins go, which removed most of the threads that this would catch, and now we've got deeper bolts. And then of course one of those is this 12mm bolt, which actually has the extra length and extra threads down here to catch anyway. So we're just going to put these O-rings in on this side, and then we'll start to get this front section together. And then we'll start applying some torque. This engine was sent to us as a ported motor, but the ports were borderline on hopeless, and the closing angles were all wrong, and this engine had a couple of bad side seals, so you had some low readings. We had to run our CNC program over top of the port work that last builder had done, and then sort of work with what we had. But we're very happy with the way the ports turned out and how large they actually are and how well this will flow. So we're not too worried about having port issues anymore. We in fact fixed all that. And again, just so you know, there is assembly lube already on these bearings. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. It is absolutely there. It's actually an ample amount. By the way, this engine is from a conversion that somebody did, 3-rotor into an RX8. So this guy has been running around in, actually, did I say he was from California? I think he's actually from Arizona, pardon me. They're running around with an RX8 with a 3-rotor turbo and making a substantial amount of power already. But like a lot of rotary enthusiasts, he has a need for more speed, and he wants to get more. So further to the intake ports that were not flowing real great, that this should improve a lot on. We also did a much larger exhaust port. I'm not sure if you can see that, but it's a better flowing port with much better finishing work, and should aid in the extra power this guy's looking for. I would like to put a little bit more silicone right there, just because I'm picky. Okay, now again, these front factory pins have this cut back here, and that goes towards the thick iron. Okay, so that's where the sloppy, loose needs to be. And if you wiggle this, you probably can't hear it in camera, but I can sure feel it. This front section has the ability to maneuver around, which is completely deliberate from Mazda. So same thing, we're going to put our cutbacks facing that center as well. And again, I can feel the clicking and that looseness, and that's the beauty of the way we designed this pin kit to work just like factory. So lots of extra strength, but no risk in wiping out the bearings, which we do see a lot. I've seen tons of 20Bs, including this one. Not so much because it was dowelled or pinned, but what we did find on this motor when we took it apart is the builder, and maybe he wasn't aware, used all 13B alignment pins without the cutback. And that's probably one of the worst things you can do. Mazda put it there for a good reason, and we are trying to maintain that function and reason. And that builder thought he knew better and said, oh, I'm just going to take those out. That'll be stronger. Well, there's no logic there as far as I'm concerned. We do this all for a reason. So, okay. Here we go. So now we're just going to put our front iron on, and then we'll start installing the one-piece studs that go all the way through the block with a nut on either side. And of course, there's not a lot of extra work in installing the additional dowels or the studs when assembling. As you can see, everything's going relatively smooth and straightforward, and probably reminds you a lot of a 13B. All right, so now we're going to put in the large 12 mil bolt from the front that goes through our dowel, one of our dowel pins, and then the other one that doesn't go through. And then this one, what we have to do is we have to take our, well, let's do this first. Let's put in our custom long 10 millimeter bolts that go also through the dowel pins into our custom threaded holes. And then we will, yeah, we don't need these. We're going to do this. We're going to put our washer here with our O-ring. And this will go all the way from front to back. So just going to put a little Vaseline on the O-ring, so it doesn't tear when it's torqued. And that will go here. And this one, same thing. Here. There. One more. On this side. There. And then we'll just snug these up a little bit. Okay, now what we need to do is put this engine horizontal. All right, so what we've done is we've actually mounted and torqued the front floating member of the crankshaft, the third rotor lobe, and tightened that down so we can get the taper to put the crankshaft square. We've also moved the engine stand like this, so you guys aren't completely lost on what I'm doing as I'm reaching down underneath the engine. So again, Mike's going to come around back, and he's going to rotate this, and now I'm going to move to the front, and I'm going to start putting some torque on these. Just go round and around, yeah, and we're going to just put some torque on these. I'm going to go to the back and trade you places, and I will give you the front. Right. There. There. Keep going. There. And trade your spots one more time. Oops, there's the wrong socket. Go ahead. Okay, and that is the magic of those and the function of those large bolts. That's really and truly all we need those for. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to put some torque on our studs, because they are sort of spaced in the correct spot for where we want the torque sequence to go next. And they're also large studs, much like the factory 12 mils, which allows us to be able to suck this block together and put torque and pressure where we want it the most. In this particular case, we're sort of doing the outsides. 3 and 9 o'clock is where we want to be for the next portion of the torque sequence. And the reason I have to loosen those ones off is because when you use these race studs, you have to try and make sure that you've got equal thread contact on all both sides of the stud. So we're ready just to do the final torque with our torque wrench in the sequence that we will use from here. But we're going to cut the video short here, because what's most important for you to see, and I'll be able to show you that now before we shut the camera off, is that we have a good line bore. All right, we finished torquing the engine bolts and studs. We've rotated the engine the opposite direction, so now the nose is facing up. We've got torque on this front assembly, and what we're going to show you is just the line bore, how free that is. And that is what we were chasing down to accomplish that easy float. All right, so in this video we covered the importance of machining studs and dowels properly, showing you how a properly studded and dowelled motor go together, showing you which studs and dowels to stay away from, what you're wasting your money on, and why it's important to do 3 rotor engines properly so you can get the extra strength from a stud and a dowel and maintain the factory functions to support the line bore so we can have this perfect float. And that's a wrap. We'll see you next time.